Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bikinis After Babies. Thank you so much for joining us today. And as always, I am your host, Mandy Rashawn, here with your other host, IFBB Pro, Jillian Hughes.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in today. If you are watching us on YouTube or you've seen the title, you know exactly who we have on today, and we are so excited to welcome her. Today we are joined by the Daraja Hill-Weidemoyer. We are so excited to have her today. Daraja has been competing since 2018 and earned her IFBB Pro card just 1 year later, winning the overall at the 2019 North Americans. Daraja made a statement early in her pro career, winning her first 2 pro shows that same year and qualifying for every Bikini Olympia after that. Daraja took home 4th place at the Bikini Olympia in 2022, but we will not be seeing her on the Olympia stage this year, as she had made the announcement that she is expecting. Daraja is currently 29 weeks pregnant and expecting a baby girl, and we're so excited to chat with her today about pregnancy, motherhood, how she is balancing fitness and coaching while expecting, as well as what the future holds for her, a fan favorite and one of the industry's biggest stars. Welcome to Bikinis After Babies, Daraja Hill-Weidemoyer. Yay!
That was such an introduction. Thank you.
I'm a little bit of a bikini historian, so I followed you for a
Yeah.
long time, pretty much since you took the stage at North Americans. I was like, who is this girl? Oh my goodness. So yeah, we're excited to kind of dive into all the things. But just to recap for those of us who do know and those who are just getting to know you, can you share with us a little bit about how you got started competing?
Yeah, so it's always I feel like I giggle at myself when I start telling this story because I was definitely one of those girls that kind of got into fitness like right when I think Instagram models were like becoming a thing. And I had always grown up wanting to be curvy. And so that was just not in my like genetic cards. I was like very much built pretty straight up and down. And so I was like, oh, cool. Like, I'll just, follow this girl's program and then I can look like that. Kind of like, oh, it just ends up being a copy and paste. I realized very quickly that that's not how that works. And so I think coming from a very competitive tennis background and like growing up an athlete, I did track and field when I was in high school and I did try soccer and I was always just very much been into sports, very much grew up a tomboy. When I got into college, I was no longer really playing tennis as seriously, but I think like when you grow up in sports, you kind of still have that drive and that like you're kind of addicted to working towards a goal and working towards something. And so like discovered the gym, discovered, the Instagram models, and I was like, cool, I'll set a goal. And then obviously very quickly like realized that's not the most fulfilling way to go about your fitness journey. And so I decided, okay, I want to compete in something. And I was like, let's maybe do either powerlifting or I could do bodybuilding. And I was actually leaning more towards powerlifting because I loved being strong. I loved getting in the gym and like really pushing myself, but I did not like benching. Like never touched it. Squatting, deadlifting, absolutely. Benching, not so much for me. And so my husband, well, then boyfriend at the time, but he was like, yeah, you could be really good at either one of these. And then at the time of my like looking into the competitive field of like physique competitions, Angelica Teixeira was, I think, just crowned 2-time Bikini Olympia and 2-time Bikini International. And so I was like, wow, I would love to look like that. I've never seen myself that lean before. With my background too, I went to school for athletic training and, we took all of the, movement science classes and cadaver classes and like just all the sports medicine stuff. And I was always very fascinated in like human anatomy, physiology, biomechanics, all that stuff. And so I also had this like fascination for just the human body and what it can do and muscles and like seeing her that lean, I was like, wow, like you can see all of her insertions, like where her glutes are inserting. And I was like, that's neat. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to do that. I hired my first coach. I say that, with air quotes because we've all probably been there. And I think I had an advantage, like understanding basic nutrition for fueling performance, recovery, just because I had like the sports medicine background, and then also growing up an athlete. And I started to kind of like not really like the approach. He had me on, I think, what was a very like cookie cutter meal plan, and like I didn't feel like the training was tailored towards what I needed for to compete in the bikini category, just because I was very quad dominant. I had great upper body, but I didn't have necessarily the glutes, I think. And so just my training split, I thought was like, okay, this isn't quite cutting it. And then, so that's when I followed Paul Ravella, my current coach. And I was like, oh, I like that he does macros, because I was like doing things like putting honey on my rice cakes and things like that. And I would post in my story, and my coach at the time was like, please stick to the meal plan. And I was like, I think it's weird that I can't put honey on my rice cake. So, yeah, I kind of gravitated more towards Paul's approach. And then he also, was always talking about coaching natural athletes, which even at the time I didn't know what that meant. But, quickly found out too, like, okay, yeah, that's, I think, more my speed as well. So like our coaching philosophy and just how I wanted to approach competing and prepping, they definitely aligned. So I reached out to Paul like after my first show, which I did relatively well in, which I wasn't expecting. I had a shaved head and I didn't know how to pose.
I remember those pictures. Yes.
Yeah, and I did, like, I was just up there having a good time. I was like, I'm just gonna get up here and see how it goes. And then it was a smaller show, but I did really well and got great feedback. Nothing really that had to do with my look. They said that, I had great genetics, great structure, and I was like, oh crap, like I might really fit in and kind of belong here. And then the rest is obviously history, but that's kind of how I got into competing, and that was the first time I really felt like I belonged in something truly and that fit me, not me trying to fit something else that kind of didn't like come naturally. So I was really excited when I found competing.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's a good story.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that you recognize that your first coach's approach was like not adequate, and that you checked that really fast before, instead of following it for like 2 years, and you found Paul so soon. So that's great that you're able to do that.
Yeah. I'm super grateful I kind of listened to that inner compass. I think that was also the first time I like really started following more of my intuition and kind of following what I felt made the most sense. And then that also led to me doing that more frequently and like just me growing more confidence. And so, yeah, I am really grateful for competing for so many reasons. But yeah.
Yeah. And it was like a fast succession, like, your first show and doing well, and then, signing up with Paul and then hitting the national stage. Was that your first national show and you turned pro at that show?
No, that was my second. So I did nationals back when people kept calling it Miami Nationals because
That's right. Yeah.
That was, I think, the last year it was held in Miami, maybe, or maybe like it might have been 1 year after that. But yeah, that was my first national show back when it was also a 2-day show.
Yes.
And I placed, it was a really large class, because that was also, I think, when bikini was like becoming really, really popular, like swarms of girls, wanting to kind of get into competing.
Yeah.
And I think my class had like 25 to 30 girls in it. And I, again, was just like, well, it's my first national show, like no expectations. We'll just see how it goes. Almost missed my class because I didn't really realize like how things were run.
Yeah.
And at the time, the elevators were so slow. So I was like trying to make it down. But it was, I almost missed my class. But I ended up I got first call outs, still kind of new to what that even meant. And then placed fourth. And I was like on top of the world. I was like, I am just happy to be here.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's when I realized, okay, nationals means, okay, I get to compete to qualify to turn pro. And so that was how I set that goal for the next year. I was like, I'm just going to go into next year. Now I have the next goal to set, and then competed at North Americans. And I actually wanted to compete at the Olympia amateur, because I was like, if I want to be on the Olympia stage one day, that's where I want to I want to step foot on that stage. I want to see how it feels. I want to be in that energy. And
Mm-hmm.
so North Americans was like my, not like test show, but like, okay, again, not setting expectations, but I want to continue to kind of get my footing here and then turn pro at North American. So I was like, well, then I'm not competing Olympia Amateur, but then got the
Yeah.
opportunity to compete the following year at the real Olympia.
At the real one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
with all of that happening so fast, at any point was it just like, oh my gosh, like this is just a whirlwind, and then just kind of feeling that pressure of expectation as well, because things were like happening so fast and you were doing so well and people are talking about like, who's this girl? Like, did at any point was that like, did it freak you out or was it stressful?
Yes, and it didn't really hit me. It wasn't until after I was like, oh, I'm just gonna apply for the Arnold. Again, like they're not gonna take me. I'm so new here. And I got invited and I was like, oh shit. I was like, oh my gosh, okay, so now I'm prepping for the Arnold. And I had already been prepping like all year because that was the year that I turned pro.
Mm-hmm.
So that was also my first year, like really learning, how to time and plan your season well because I was also planning on doing Olympia later that year. And so, I didn't have a whole lot of time, to take a break after my rookie season, after
Mm-hmm.
winning my first two shows. And so that was hard because I was starting to get stressed about like, okay, well, how am I going to show up? What do they expect from me? Like I'm now on stage with all these girls that I've been looking up to since I started competing. Like it was all that was like a lot all at once. Obviously super grateful for the experience and wouldn't have traded it for the world, but that was my first like, okay, this is like you're doing this.
Yeah.
And then when I got feedback, that was also kind of my first year, like I think really focused and intentional with my training. And then I realized, okay, I was learning a lot about how my body responds to training and my upper body grows really quickly. So that was something I had to kind of like learn and rework.
Mm-hmm.
Because I still needed, to grow my glutes more. That's always been like my biggest feedback is that my glutes are just a little on the petite side. And so I had to work on after the Arnold. That was, I hate to say like my worst package, but in terms of like the overall look and balance for the bikini category, I tried a different suit color that did not suit me. And I didn't, yeah, it wasn't my best package, but it was definitely like one of my best lessons learned.
Yeah.
That's a good way. That's a very mindset way to look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You learn
Yeah. I
so
was
much
like,
from that.
okay, noted. Noted.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that was 2020, right? So then going
Yeah.
through all of like the rest of that year and prepping for the Olympia and all of that, that just
Yeah.
really changed everything. So, so yeah, I can
Yeah.
imagine there was probably a lot of challenges, you know, prepping for that first Olympia
Yeah.
and taking that feedback and
Yeah, I mean, and that was like, I also am like one of those people, I love feedback. I love to like hear, okay, like, yes, I did my best. It might not have been like what the judges wanted that day, but I'm like, okay, what do I need to do then to kind of like continue to tweak and mold and like fine tune things? Because, and I know, I'm sure we'll talk about it, but I still would love to, be Miss Bikini Olympia one day if, the cards are in my favor. But,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's fun. I just get a kick out of it. So
yeah, yeah. So tell me about the pregnancy and sort of like the decision, like, you know, and sort of taking a break now, or did that kind of all come about sort of naturally? Like, was it, this is okay, it's time to take a break? You know, what did that kind of look like for you as far as like, you know, starting your family?
for sure. So it's funny, like anybody that would ask me kind of like what I'm really wanting to do, I think at the start of 2022, which ended up being like the year I got married, and then I placed top four at the Olympia. That was like my best placing. I was like on top of the world that
Yeah.
year. I was like really starting to get baby fever. I was like, oh my gosh, like I would see little babies or moms and their bumps and just kind of like melt, and envision, myself there, in the near future. And so after 2022 Olympia, I was like, okay, I'm married now. I prepped and planned a wedding. Like the 2023 Olympia was like my first year to really only focus on competing and obviously working. But I had no other stresses. Like every year that I was competing, the year I got my pro card, I was working full time and going to school part time because I wanted to pursue my degree in physical therapy, and then decided I didn't want to do that. But then I was transitioning out of working and pursuing like a career in fitness full time so that I could also balance both competing and making a living. And then I was like, I'm going to get married and prep. And that, is not something people typically recommend. But I love to make things harder for myself than they need to be. But we've been together since 2014. So almost 11 years we've been together. We were engaged for 3, and I was like, I want to get married this year. And I was like, I also really want to prep. So then I was like, I'm going to do both. So 2023, I was like, okay, this should go really smooth, but it's also, the body lets you know when it's just about had enough of your shit. And prep is a lot on the body, and to do it, year after year consecutively. Sure, I had breaks, but I think every competitor has had that experience where they probably prepped past their body's like time where they're kind of like, I'm just tired. Like mentally I was in it. But I think my body kind of let me know that it was time, it needed a rest. And I was having more flare-ups than I typically would with my endometriosis. And I was supposed to have a surgery to help kind of like clean a lot of that out. For people who don't know, typically like endometriosis, you can kind of try to go and clean out some of that tissue with an excision where they burn off the adhesions to like your organs or wherever it's kind of adhered to. But then that ended up kind of like the rug got pulled out from under me pretty quickly at the last minute. And that surgery got canceled because when I got my breast augmentation, I come out of surgery and like I had a really like rapid, like high heart rate out of nowhere. They were like, hey, like I think you should get tested for this condition called Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, cause I'd also had a heart murmur when I was little. So, but I had since then had no like concerns about maybe having any of that. I was like, okay, cool. Like I'll look into that. And then never did. And then I remembered the day before my surgery, I was like, oh yeah, by the way, I think I haven't had this checked out yet, but like we might want to take a look. And they were like, okay, yeah, we can't do this until you go to see a cardiologist and get all this looked at. And then so I was like, cool. So I'm not having the surgery this year because I was like, I'll just keep prepping after the surgery. It's like crazy what I was like determined to put my body through.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, okay, after I have the surgery, I'll be able to recover it, and then I won't have to deal with my endo anymore. But it ended up, I think everything happened for a reason, and who knows what would have happened had I gone ahead and had that surgery. So I continued prepping, and then the prep just wasn't progressing the way that it had like the last 4 years I was competing. And so I was starting to kind of feel like, okay, this might be my body letting me know, like, hey, dude, like, I'm kind of tired. And I'm like, I get it.
Yeah.
And so I did Battle of the Bodies, won that show. Still didn't feel like I quite nailed conditioning, which that was my feedback, was that, hey, like, you brought a great package. You just, for Olympia, come in a little bit tighter. And I was like, okay, cool, no problem. We have plenty of time. But I wanted to get in front of Sandy, just to kind of show her like, hey, these are the improvements that we've made. This is my physique up to this point. Like any feedback you have from me. And I did Arizona, like I think a week or two after, and placed third. Again, conditioning wasn't quite there. Like we had started like really pushing really hard, and it just was not unfolding the way that I kept like envisioning it. And, you know, going back, obviously I have reference photos from my last prep to kind of like put next to my current pictures and go, okay, how is conditioning looking? And it just wasn't quite hitting. It was so close, but it wasn't quite there. And then, so that was definitely the first year I was like, dude, like, I had to talk with Paul. I was like, man, I don't know, like, if this is gonna be, if this is gonna work out. I don't see it. I don't see myself showing up to Olympia, you know, the way that we have in the past and the way that we know that we can. And so I had already kind of decided, like, I think 6-ish weeks out from Olympia, that I was going to take this year off, 2024 off, because I'm definitely someone who likes to listen to their body. And when your body's telling you, like, hey, man, it's time to take a break, like, I don't like to ignore all of those things because then you run into issues. And so, you know, that was also the year I was coming out. Core Nutritional is my supplement sponsor. We had collaborated and launched a signature pre-workout flavor. And so we were going to be kind of pushing all of that at the Olympia. And so I decided I'm going to see it through. But that was the first year that I was also like, I might not want to do the Olympia. Like, yes, I'm qualified, but I think I might sit it out. And we've seen athletes do that before. Not typically in bikini. We tend to not know when to sit down.
We just keep going.
Like, oh, we'll just keep competing. But I've definitely seen it, you know, in some of the men's divisions. Obviously, the larger women's divisions, we've seen that happen. And so that was the first year I was like, I might just say no, thank you. But because of just everything that I had writing on that, and also not knowing, like, hey, maybe the judges might like a fuller package from me. My physique has always kind of come in a little too lean from the back. So I was like, maybe they just want to see something a little bit different. And so I went through with it, and I got ninth, which was a big backslide from fourth. And I was definitely disappointed. I wasn't necessarily like surprised, but obviously that was a huge bummer. Yes, I placed top 10, and there were plenty of girls that were commenting on my post after saying, like, well, isn't placing top 10 at Olympia still amazing? You know, and trying to be encouraging. I'm like, yeah, but I'm still competitive and I still, you know, want to win this thing. So anything short of that, you know, doesn't feel the same. And so, yeah, but I had pretty much in my mind already had that I was going to take this year off. Once I started to notice that, you know, things were just getting a little bit tired looking.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And then as far as like baby planning, we had planned to go on vacation because we honeymooned in Switzerland after our wedding last year, which was so much fun. It's so beautiful out there. And we wanted to go back, just because we also were like, well, very seriously, this is good, might be, you know, our last big vacation for a while. Also just our last year, just the two of us. So we wanted to go and have that time. So I was like, no pregnant before Switzerland, because I want to have my espresso martini and have fun and feel good. And so after we got back, I had some travel, and then, you know, after I think February, I was like, okay, let's, you know, start trying but not trying. Which for me, like, I'm such a planner and I have all my stuff tracked. So like we were not trying, but like trying.
Yeah.
And the first month I was like, okay, like, let's see how it goes with like me not, you know, necessarily like paying close attention to ovulation. Let's just kind of see. And then my period was late. So I was like, oh my gosh, like maybe we're pregnant already. And then it's totally threw me because I ended up getting it like I think 4 days late, which I'm usually pretty on the dot. So I was like, oh, what a bummer. But I kind of expected, I went into it just with my competitive history and also, you know, having endometriosis and PCOS. I was like, I was full on kind of trying to prepare myself mentally for like it taking at least a year. I was like, if it doesn't happen naturally in a year, we'll go look at, you know, a fertility specialist and kind of get some tests done. But then that next month in March, I was like, okay, let's test ovulation. Let's get that little positive 2 lines on the strip, and then make sure like all that's good. So I would at least know I was ovulating, and that was positive. And then so that week I was like, all right, Keith, we're on a schedule. These are the days that we're going to be doing it. And yeah, that was the month that we conceived, and it happened yeah. So, and then of course,
That's awesome.
Yeah. Of course the anxiety happens and starts because you're like, okay, nobody panic. Everything's gonna go just fine. But then we also found out we were moving, like literally, like I think within a month of finding out I was pregnant. So I was like, here we freaking go.
That's life, isn't it? Like it rains, it pours. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. But I was like, I'm gonna be grateful for it all because, that was what we asked for and wanted. I remember having like this moment. I was sitting on the couch and like that 2 week wait, which if you have been trying to conceive or had that experience, you know how long that 2 weeks is. Feels like freaking forever. I had sat down and just like said like the most intentional prayer ever, and like cried and like let a whole like flow of emotions just kind of like flow, and like meditated on it. My hand was on my uterus. I was like, please God, I promise to take care of this baby. And then literally the next day I took a test, and it was a week earlier than I needed to take a test, and I got like the faintest positive line, and I was like, shut up. And then
Oh my
so that was really wild.
That's such a beautiful story, like seeing those little lines, like that feeling, especially when you like, I know what you're talking about, like, so when you're just like praying and hoping and doing everything you can, and to get that, like, like, that's so exciting.
Yeah, I was super pumped. And it's so funny to like, my husband, he like needed, he didn't realize like, even a faint positive line, like a faint double line, is like still a positive test. And he didn't know that. He thought it had to just be like very much like they're the same color, or like the written like test, the clear blue, like pregnant, not pregnant. Typical dude, like he needed it in black and white, like yes, you're pregnant, no, you're not. And so I showed him like 4 separate tests, and they all had like that like little light pink second line, and he was like kind of confused, but he saw like the look on my face, so he was like smiling. But he was like, wait, I don't get it, like, are you pregnant or no? And I'm like, yes. I am. And then he made me pee on a digital test that I was like saving for like when I felt like it was for sure going to be positive, because I just did not want to see like not pregnant. And I did it, and it was positive. And he was like, oh my gosh, yay. And I was like, I already told you I was pregnant. But yes, we are for sure in writing pregnant.
Oh my gosh. That's so exciting. And then you kept it a secret for like a while. And so like
12 weeks. I waited the 12 weeks. I did tell like close friends. And I know that, the advice is, do what makes you feel the most at peace. For every mom it's different, but I have read, it's good to have a couple of people that can, at least be supportive. Worst case scenario, which you never want to happen, like something does happen, you have someone to talk to. And so I told my close friends, and then, my brother and my dad, I called them because I had just seen them. I was hoping to tell them in person, but I wanted to wait and have that time to just like be certain that everything was going well and healthy. And we didn't get a chance to do our doctor's appointment until 9 weeks, because we were moving, so I didn't want to schedule that before we moved, because then I'd have to, do it all over again. So we waited, and then it was the most exciting announcement ever. I was so pumped to tell the world. But yeah, I definitely wanted to wait until it was safe to tell everyone.
Yeah. In your appointment, you got to hear the heartbeat too, the fluttering.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Yes, the heartbeat, that is like nothing compares to that. Every time we go, that's, whether I get to see her, because they don't do sonic ultrasounds every single time you go.
Hmm.
But they do listen to the heartbeat, and like I just live for that sound.
Hmm.
Um and then I wasn't expecting at 9 weeks to like see the little thing like wiggling around in there. I was like, oh my gosh, it's moving. So yeah, the heartbeat, and then to see it like just move around in there with the little nubs. I was
Yeah.
like, that is just crazy. And then that one, making sure that there was only one, one in there and not two. Because twins do run on my side of the family. So I was like, there's a chance.
Hmm.
But yeah, there's just one baby.
Yeah. Well, you are like positively glowing, and like I see you like
Thank
at
you.
shows with the cutest little outfits on, and your baby bump. It's the cutest thing ever. And I think it's a really good thing for women in fitness to see, like, look, this is like a pro at the top of her game. She's like having a family, and she's still present, still involved in the industry. So I'm curious to know like how you're balancing like that side of your life, which is a huge piece of who you are, and then now shifting gears away from like, prepping and or building or whatever it is. Like fitness just takes a different
Yeah.
focus when you're, focusing on your pregnancy. So what's that been like for you?
Honestly, the hardest part really has just been like not having my usual routine, and not like having that consistency. Like I think whether I'm prepping or not, I love to like wake up and know what my day is going to be like every single
Hmm.
day. Like just to have the same consistent energy every day, to have the same eat my same foods every day. That all went out the window like so fast. Because I know everybody's pregnancy experience is different, and each pregnancy I've heard is different. But for me, I kind of knew I wasn't going to be one of those lucky ducks that like doesn't have any issues, or symptoms. The best part has been like the support I think I've gotten from like not just my like the following that I have on Instagram and the community that I have there, but also my clients are also excited for me, which I think, I feel like as a woman, like working too, I feel like we probably maybe all have had that like anxiety in the back of our mind that like not everyone's going to be supportive and,
Hmm.
trust that, I guess. I feel like there's just such a stigma with like women in pregnancy and like having kids that like they're just not going to be as productive, they're not going to be as reliable, they're not going to be, this
Mm-hmm.
and that. Because obviously now we have this life to look after, and it's I think I've tried to give myself some grace and being like allowing myself to slow down a little bit, because the first trimester, like up until like I think maybe 20, early 20 weeks, I really was like having a hard time with just my energy, my focus. And so my productivity, at least my perception of my productivity, really took a hit. And that was hard for me because I definitely am someone that prides myself on being able to do all the things all the
Yeah.
time. And, say, yeah, you can throw that on my plate, totally fine. Like, I'll handle it. And just juggling so many things at once. And so, like, I think, maybe a bit of an identity crisis of like feeling like, okay, that's like not who I am in the moment. Thank God for having a supportive husband who's constantly reminding me, like, it's fine, go take a nap, like, go lay down, like, you need to get some
Oh.
rest. Like, you're literally building our baby, so, like, you need to just stop.
Hmm.
Stop beating yourself up. And so that's obviously been super helpful. And then having a community of moms too to reach out to that can also identify and relate to what you're going through. Like seeing even just like in the comments on some posts of like relatable pregnancy experiences of moms being like, I wanted to quit my job. Like I just could not do this anymore. And I'm like, okay, I'm not just being a little baby. Like it really is taking a toll. So that's been the hardest part, is just feeling like I haven't been able to like show up in life the way that I typically would. But I think when I look back at the last few years of my life, I've been like very go, 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 like
Mm-hmm.
grinding really hard. And I think to just remember and remind myself that like you have your phases of growing and blooming, and then just like the seasons, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you have to have your time where you recluse and, you know, kind of like so that you have can build that energy back up to like
Yeah.
bloom again in a different way. And so that's kind of how I'm trying to look at it. But I do have to constantly remind myself, like, it's okay, Daraja. But I think I am loving the embrace of the fitness community. Whenever I go to, like, when I went to the show, when I went to North Americans or when I went to
Yeah.
Texas, like, everyone's like, oh my gosh, like, look at you. And I'm like, I know. I'm usually in work right now. And yeah, so that's been absolutely amazing.
I think people are like more supportive than we think. Like we put so much
Mm-hmm.
pressure on ourselves to like,
Yeah.
we think we can still like, grind and crush it and do all this stuff, but nobody really expects that of us. Like we're totally doing it to ourselves. Like
Yeah.
everyone's so understanding. So,
Yeah.
but you'll find that balance.
It's
It's like you said, you just like, there's different seasons and, I think as a mom, like I did shows before I had kids. I've done shows, after each pregnancy and it's just, you just roll with it, like I think that's one thing learning how to let some things go and just know I'm doing my best at all times. And really nobody expects more than I expect for myself. So,
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
yeah.
huge. That's so huge. I mean, it's good that we expect so much from ourselves, and I feel like that's why we're in the positions that we're in, doing the things that we're doing, and being
Yeah.
such amazing moms, and working and like inspiring so many other women to do the same
Hmm.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's nice that like we get to show another side of things that like is I think more realistic than just like
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
oh this person that doesn't have any struggles or experiences of like adversity or like things to overcome. I think that's always where I find people reach out just grateful that they can relate to those experiences and realize like oh you peek behind the curtain, it's not just like all rainbows and sunshine.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And to also I think I always try to kind of warn people about assuming that you need somebody else to like be an example for like what's achievable. I've written about this in my like story posts before, but I think sometimes you also just have to be the example that you're wanting to see so that someone else can see that or that you can see that it's possible. Like I think sometimes we sell ourselves short in experiencing certain things or like achieving certain things because we don't see someone else doing that. And we're like, oh, well, if they couldn't do it, like I probably can't do it. It's like, oh, well, maybe if you just, maybe you can do it. And then somebody else is going to go, oh, they can do it. I can do it. So I think that's
Yeah.
also a big kind of thing to keep in mind.
I love that. I think that's so true.
Yeah.
It's a lot of it's self-limiting beliefs too,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah. I lived in
yeah.
that for a long time, and I was like, I try to let that go.
Yeah.
From a few years ago, I think I started kind of trying to like let go of a lot of that because I did live in a lot of self-limiting beliefs for a long time. So I try to recognize when I'm maybe living in that a little too much
Mm-hmm.
and saying, actually, I can make that happen.
Yeah.
That can be like
I know
really
social media.
tough. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Mandy.
Yeah. Oh no, I was just agreeing because social media is so much like that because you see snippets and clips and you think like, oh, they're doing all of this stuff and they have no problems and no worries. And I know we hear it a lot from clients like, oh, I have 3, 4, 5 kids. I have this, that, or like their kids are sick or hurt or, they're like full-time caregivers. And it's like, how do you balance everything? It's like, there's actually a lot of women out there that are doing all of it. Like you just shared, you were going through prep and the possibility of surgery and planned a wet. You did 2 massive things at the same time. And it's like, you can do what you believe you can do,
Yeah.
no matter how absolutely impossibly hard it seems. But like you said, are you going to be the first one to do it? Or if you share your story, even if it's a little bit, maybe there's a huge community out there that can like help you and you not feel so alone.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Absolutely.
I
And
don't think
that's one
people
of the
talk enough
more
about that.
positive things of, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah, I think we're probably on the same
I was
page,
just
anyways.
I was just gonna say that's I think one of the like brighter sides of social media community is
yeah.
like having that like reach to other people that maybe not like that don't necessarily live super close to you, but like can share similar experiences that you can go, oh my gosh, okay, cool, like, and then connect in that way. I think is yeah, that was just what I was gonna say because obviously social media has an uglier side, but I think that's one of the more positive sides of it.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Definitely. I think that you're starting to see like more of people opening up and learning how to like be like it feels safer to be vulnerable. It is hard to like put your all your stuff out there. You know you want to help other people and you have something to say and you want to share your story and whatnot. And of course there's, you know, always one person that seems to speak louder than everybody else and
Yeah.
whatnot. But I think that's something that athletes don't talk about a lot. I feel like in our space, like it's very like technical, like we're talking about glutes and conditioning and training and da, da. But like I think the mindset piece of things is really important, like believing in yourself and overcoming self-doubt and maybe like having had experience in the past that like really beat you down. And you talked about that was something that you had to overcome. Can you share a little bit about like what that journey was and some strategies that you used to like get past all that and learn to, you know, just kind of deal with some of those feelings?
Yeah, I mean, there were definitely just some relationships in my past that I've kind of tried to like really distance myself from. Some were easy to kind of just like, you know, I'm done, cool, that's fine. Like you go your way, I'll go my way. Some are not so easy, to simply just cut and dry. But I definitely had my experience with like very narcissistic people that I think know how to find very empathetic and like people who just love to do for others. And that definitely led to me getting, you know, taken advantage of at times, just in like friendships or, and things like that. And I think I pretty much just felt like I accepted other people's views and opinions of me as being like that's me. Then if that's I put a lot of value in what others saw of me and thought of me, over my own kind of opinion of myself and what I felt. I kind of like this vision of myself, I didn't really have one. I think it was others' perceptions, was really kind of like the only kind of like that was the dictionary definition of Daraja was what other people could say about me. And so obviously, you know, when you kind of go through a lot of life like that, I think up until my early 20s, I really didn't have a very solid sense of self, because of just relationships in my life being pretty like rocky and like not very consistent.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't really until I got into competing that I learned how to set boundaries. I didn't know that, you know, doing that, I was always afraid to do that because I felt like if I set boundaries with people, they're not going to want me. I'm not going to be as valuable to them. I'm not going to be as useful to them, because they can't just, you know, ask and do what they want. And then, you know, it was always a very like one-sided exchange. And so that in itself was very draining for a long time. And then, so yeah, I got into competing. I learned how to set boundaries, because obviously in competing, if you don't set boundaries, you don't really get anything done.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the start of me saying, okay, this is acceptable, this is not acceptable, and having a very clear understanding of what Daraja wanted and what Daraja needed, and then kind of like finding out really like who I am and not being, I wouldn't say I was ever ashamed of kind of like just who I am as a person, but I think I had a hard time seeing my personality and who I am and the characteristics that I have. I always saw them as weaknesses because I saw them as people's I saw them as ways for people to take advantage of me. And so in that way, I started to be very guarded. And then like, and taking advantage of me in like terms of like my kindness and my willingness and wantingness to kind of like help people. And so it wasn't until I kind of like really got into competing and grew more into myself that I realized like my characteristics and like my personality is there. I have a lot of strengths here, and I can really use them to kind of not just grow for myself, but with what I want to do. Like I do know that I love helping people. And I love seeing other people succeed and thrive. And I love, like, whenever I started posing coaching, that was like where I started to feel really fulfilled, because you start to see that confidence grow in other women, and you start to see them step into their own light. And like, for me, I know exactly what that feels like. And I know what that transition feels like, to feel like you're stepping into yourself and you're not apologizing for it. You're not sorry about it. And I think that was like, I'm like, yes, like that feeling is just unparalleled to me. And so I realized, like, the more I became true to myself and the more I accepted me and kind of was just loving me, I was able to do more for other people and feel fulfilled in that, because I wasn't dimming my light for somebody else to feel better. I was shining just as bright and saying, hey girl, like, come, let's shine together, you know?
Yeah.
And so that, like, that's kind of really where I started to grow my confidence, was like, I think maybe 22, 23 years old. I was starting to really kind of be like proud of me and like okay with being proud of me. Because even now I have a hard time, like, what I would consider bragging about myself as just someone like saying, yeah, I've accomplished this and this. And it's not necessarily bragging, but I even then would have a hard time really kind of saying that, because I was always afraid of someone kind of being like upset by me saying that I'm proud of myself. Or kind of going off, like listing off some of my accomplishments. But yeah, I took a lot of active work on myself too. It wasn't just something that I could kind of just sit back and let happen. I had to recognize in myself, like, okay, these thought patterns are not productive or conducive to like cultivating confidence and kind of growing myself. So there were just certain things, even like in like even thoughts can become very habitual, and certain actions become very habitual because of those thoughts. And so I had to quick recognize, like, oh, Daraja, like, you used to do this. You used to think like this, and this used to keep you from doing, from growing. I had to stop, like, go, okay, nope, we're not doing that this time. We're gonna flip it and take a different course of action. And then that led to me taking other different courses of action and saying yes to more things. And then I realized, like, wow, like, this is, like, you're growing, you're blossoming, and it's like totally okay. And yeah, there are people that kind of fell off and didn't really want to support me in that, which, I had to go, that's okay. That's totally fine. That person was not meant to be in my life forever. There's a quote that I love that says, like, some people are meant to come in your life and like kind of stay in your life, and then some people are just meant to come in your life and teach you something and get out. And that was always hard for me too, growing up, because I was like, oh my gosh, if this person doesn't want to be in my space or be around me, I'm like, what did I do wrong, But it's not always the case. Sometimes people just have, that was their purpose, was to kind of teach you something, and then you grow from that.
Yeah, I can relate to that so much. When I started out, I had a lot of that, and I had a lot of people take advantage of me, and I couldn't see it. I actually never saw it. It was my husband that was like, you're a giver, and you're surrounded by takers, and like, you should look at this. And I was like, no, it's fine.
Yeah.
And then I started competing. I started going to the gym. I had a routine, and then I started seeing it. And then I was like, oh, this is not healthy. This isn't who I am. This isn't who I want to be. This isn't respectful of me. And similar to you, it's like, I need I need to address this actively, otherwise it won't get addressed.
Yeah.
So took time though, but yeah, I definitely.
It does. It takes time.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
My husband was
it's
proud of me. So proud of me.
yeah. Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
I think too, like as like you like, you know, have your baby and you know your time is so precious, like you're gonna want to spend every second that you can with your baby as they're growing and changing, and you know it's just important to like really just bring your circle down to those people who like really add value to your life, and it takes people years. Like I don't think I did that until like I was almost 40. You know, it just took a long time. But I think it's so interesting that like, you know, going into prep for you and like, you know, having these successes and, you know, meeting other people and just having all of that just really brought you into who you are, which I think is like such a beautiful thing about this sport. Mandy and I always talk about it with like our clients who, you know, they do all these wonderful things after like having had a big victory, like, you know, overcoming weight loss. And it's not because they like got hotter or like, you know, have this rockin' body. It's really because of who they become, because they believe in themselves.
Yes.
And it's very
Yes.
interesting. Yeah.
Yes. No, that's so true. And it's something, I'm sorry, can you hear my dog snoring in the back?
It's so cute. I know it's so on brand for us.
As long as you
So
can
cute.
hear it. But no, it's something that like whenever I have a client that struggles with like the after period of dieting or after prep, right? When they're not as lean as they
Yeah.
were, and they usually kind of associate like prep with these habits, right? They are great at time management. They're great at making sure they have their meals and foods prepped on time. They have their routine that they stick to. And they pretty much have everything pretty mapped out. They know, they wake up, they know exactly what they're doing that day, because that's the only way to really succeed in fat loss and prep is to, you know, have a plan and execute. And then once the diet's over, you know, that's like, oh, okay, cool. I get to go have my more drinks with friends. I get to indulge in more foods. I get to be more flexible. And it's like, yes, that's an option now. But then they start to realize, okay, one, the scale is going up pretty quickly. Two, they're not feeling that great all the time. And it's like, we can't just associate that routine and that consistency with just fat loss and dieting and prep. You feel so good, and there's usually always like, especially in prep, obviously in fat loss, typically we start to feel better and better because one, we're succeeding at something, but two, you start to like just reach a body composition that your body is generally pretty happy in. You're a little bit lighter, you have more energy, you're eating better on a regular basis, you're hydrating, you're getting good sleep, right? We, for some reason, like abandon a lot of those things once we're not dieting until we realize like it's not really like the fat loss and the, you know, losing 20 pounds that truly kind of long term makes you feel amazing. It's that you have these habits in place that just make your body feel good on a regular basis. And it's just a general health and well-being thing. It's not just a fat loss thing, right? We don't just eat the way we eat and exercise the way we exercise and do the things that we do for this one goal. It's a lifestyle because that makes you feel better.
Yeah.
And I think that was like one of the things that I learned in my first reverse was, oh, I can eat whatever I want now as much as I want. Cool. And then I, you know, 25 pounds later and I'm feeling super tired and sluggish. My lifts aren't as great. I just feel off center, right? Not as balanced, not as grounded. And it's really just because I miss my routine. And so that's, yeah, a lesson that sometimes is not so easy to like accept and learn.
Well, I'm so excited to see you, you know, come into this role of being a mother, and you've talked a little bit about some of your plans for your business and coaching after pregnancy. Can you share a little sneak peek with us about what that like looks like for you?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I mean, I have worked with moms before, but I am so excited to be able to like actually relate to what they're going through. Because I know, you know, all things like time and everything and like managing your day is no longer just you. It's you, you know, you live for this thing, this living thing that you now have to take care of. And so I'm really excited to be able to like go through the experience of postpartum and like really help moms on like just a true level of understanding, not just empathy, but like really knowing what it's like. And then, you know, I do want to kind of have just some like plans and ideas and things that are centered around like not just one-on-one coaching. Obviously, that's what I love. I love to have my clients that I check in with each week, but to maybe have, you know, some programs or some things in place that you can like easy quick downloads that you can go, okay, here's like 8 weeks of, you know, workouts, and then, you know, there's maybe a little library of me going through the workouts with you if you need somebody to kind of like have that accountability. Maybe even workouts that are at home because, you know, going to the gym is too much. Having some tips and things for meal prepping, you know, how to, you know, put your grocery list together for the week, and how to kind of like really take care of you while all your focus is on this baby. And yeah, so I'm excited to like just expand a lot of that more, and not just be so like, oh, if you want to, you know, work with me or do what I do, it just has to be, you know, a one-on-one thing. You can do some things on your own time, and then if that makes you want to reach out for something more intimate like one-on-one coaching, then great. But hopefully this is something to like kind of help you get started.
Love
I love that.
Yeah, that's so it's going to come right out of your own like life experience as it's happening. And it just, you know, people will, you know, look to you as sort of like, wow, like look at what she did, you know, I can do it too. So I think that's so cool to be that for somebody else.
Yeah. For sure. And then prep one day. We'll see. I don't plan on prepping next year because I don't want to put that amount of pressure on my body. I just want to see how everything goes. And I think to kind of add really quickly to like my last, you know, kind of like how I want to go into the next year and focusing on, you know, my postpartum journey, I would love to hold like maybe a bit of an accountability challenge where, you know, kind of how I talked about like, okay, let's, you know, start prepping our foods again and getting back into a routine and exercising regularly. It has nothing really to do with being in a calorie deficit or targeting fat loss. It's really just kind of getting your body back balanced and happy because a healthy body is a happy body and a responsive body. So say you do want to prep or, you know, diet later in the year, it's going to be easier to do that if you're eating food.
Yeah. Well, and that's so helpful getting like we were talking about having a support group and being able to have an accountability group. Like you said, it doesn't have to focus on the scale or inches. It's what did you prep for dinner for your family? What vegetables did you use tonight? What did you know? Things like that. And just being able to have that community, and it's just like having that support even when someone's struggling, like you can be there for them and help them and they won't be alone.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's great.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
Well, this has been so great to chat with you today and just kind of learn how things are going and, you know, what kind of the future looks like for you. I know we'll see you up on that Olympia stage again, which will be even sweeter because you'll have your family in the crowd cheering for
so
you.
Exciting.
Which that's just the coolest thing to have your kids, you know, be a part of the journey and be proud of you. So we're so excited for you. So tell our audience where they can reach you. Oh, sorry.
I was just saying thank you for having me on, and like we were just talking about before we hit record, I just love talking about this stuff because I am so excited to be a mom. So Instagram is like where I do most of my sharing. I tried YouTube and it's super time consuming and intimidating, so
we know we both tried.
Who knows when I'll be back there.
I'm a YouTube dropout.
Yeah. But no, Instagram is where you can find me. My personal page is at Daraja Wide, Daraja, my full name, and then WEID is a portion of my last name. And then my coach's page is at Coach Daraja. is where you can find where I post a lot of my like client progress and things like that.
Well, it has been so lovely talking to you today, and we will link all of your contact information below. And thank you again, and thanks everybody for tuning in today.
Yeah, thank you guys for listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Bye, guys.